This was the scene 2 years ago in the Toronto Islands, 2017. Major flooding there, and there's concerns that we could see the water levels peak that high again this year. For more on why this severe flooding is happening more frequently, we are joined now by Professor Joseph Deloge of the University of Toronto from the Geography and Earth Sciences Department. Professor, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
What is this a normal thing we're seeing? We saw the last flooding like this, I believe, was in the early 70s. Is this normal, or is this above and beyond the norm?
Well, certainly levels are high. This is springtime. It's time for runoff and rainfall, so high lake levels at this time of year are normal. What's perhaps less than normal is the fact that we're seeing several years in a row of above normal high lake levels. It's happened in the past, it's happening now, but certainly the degree to which the lake levels are high are beyond normal.
What is the concern if these levels continue? I mean, I can remember doing stories 20, 25 years ago where we were concerned about low water levels on the lakes. Now we're concerned about the high. What's the concern if these water levels stay up?
Yeah, certainly as recently as 2012, people were talking about extremely low levels and docks high and dry around the Great Lakes. It takes only 2 or 3 years of above average rainfall, snowpack, runoff and so on to bring those lake levels back up. So we're seeing lakes far above beyond the 60s levels where they were quite high at that time. So there is some natural cycle to this as well, but it's the persistent year after year impact. And you add to that the fact that we've developed more areas along shorelines, that you're seeing greater awareness of these risk areas.
Is there a concern that I mean, the islands essentially are sandbanks. Is there a concern we could actually lose them if these high water levels continue?
The water doesn't flow, so in that case it's just standing water. But the fact that you're constantly being flooded, your infrastructure is being affected and impacted is the key thing. The construction of Tommy Thompson Park on the east side of the islands helps protect it from wave erosion impacts, but certainly the high water levels can be damaging, and that's what trying to mitigate on this. And there's been some protection by TRCA and others that have been put in place since 2017. So there is response to this, but it's a natural occurrence to have these lake levels high, but not this high.
Is there more we can do, or are we just going to have to kind of just essentially minimize the damage as opposed to building something that will stop the water, like a dike along the Mississippi, things like that?
No, there's not much that can be done in a watershed as big as the Great Lakes. Remember, we've got inflow from 4 lakes upstream of Lake Ontario. You've got inflow from the watersheds into Lake Ontario itself. And some people think about the dam at Cornwall as being one of the factors that influence Lake Ontario lake levels. That's particularly quite minor. But all those three have a control on Lake Ontario. It's the 2 natural ones that are the most important, and those are just a result of climate variability and extremes in weather.
Is there, I mean, we've talked about, I know it's on a small scale, but we've talked about returning the Don, the mouth of the Don back to its natural state. Do we need more of that along shorelines to help with flooding, or is it's just something that's going to happen?
Well, the newer regulations that have come in for development put infrastructure, new infrastructure that's built back from shoreline areas, and that's critically important. The challenge is those legacy and historical developments that are in those sort of lovely low-lying areas along shorelines. We're seeing it in Quebec now, particularly just west of Montreal. So those are the hard ones to deal with when you've allowed development in areas where you don't know where the flood risks are. And that's the key thing, trying to estimate flood risk areas under a new regime of wetter and higher lake levels.
Professor, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.